Okay, the time being 8:02 a.m. on Tuesday, the 7th of June. I'm going to call to order the Westboro Economic Development Committee meeting. Looks like we have a couple of meeting minutes to approve. Has everybody had a chance to review the May 3rd meeting minutes as well as the brief meeting we had on May 24th? Any questions, comments, changes?
Do
No?
we use two separate motions, or can you, is that?
I think we can do one motion to approve both.
Okay.
Yeah.
A motion to approve the minutes for May 3rd, 2022, and May 24th, 2022.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Got a schedule already.
Look at that.
Yeah, we're efficient this morning. Okay, so first on our agenda, or second on our agenda, is the EDC Year in Review Award Celebration, a debriefing on that. Zach?
Great, yeah, I just wanted to take some time to reflect on this year's EDC Award Celebration, collect feedback from each of you, and try and make some decisions about how we might do this next year. So I think concisely there's sort of three major categories that I want to discuss today. The first is timing. When do we want to host the event next year? Because this one wasn't, I know in the past, I think it had been in January, late January. This year we had it in late April. Personally, I think that worked pretty well. But, I think we could be flexible to, move it back to March or something like that for next year. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I also wanted to get, your thoughts on the location and, whether or not, and this year we tried it out in the Great Hall. I also think it actually worked pretty well. I think a lot of people were excited to see that space. So we could decide to do it there again next year. We could try to decide to do something different or go back to the DoubleTree again. And the third is just general feedback and, possible improvements for next year. I think the videos were, again, a huge smashing hit. And thank you to the Westboro TV team for collaborating with us on that. Some of the other decision points that we might improve upon our food. So I think we did, or at least this is one of the comments that I'm tracking, is that we had definitely overestimated the amount of food that people are going to eat and drink at that event. And so we can pare that back. But I'll leave it open. If we want to discuss timing first, I think, let's start there. What are folks' thoughts?
So I thought that the timing was perfect. I actually enjoyed it. I think in years past, for those of you who have gone to the awards when we had it in January, there were a couple of times where we were dealing with snow and issues with that, some people not showing up because of snow and things like that. So I think from a timing perspective, I think it's good. Also, it's spring. Everybody's excited to get out and about. You have some good weather. So my feeling is we continue it around the same time.
I think we can move it, if I may, you might want to move it just a little earlier, maybe April-ish, if you want to.
Well, we were end of April, right? So
It
we
was
could
the,
do
the last day of April.
So we could do March, but I mean,
Yeah.
March or April, I think,
Late
just,
March, early
yeah,
April.
yeah, yeah.
You can set an exact date later, but it's important to just, from a timing standpoint, to get a good idea of where you want to start, so you can work backwards on that.
Sure. Yeah,
Obviously, those
we
that
all know
planned
that.
it knows how long it takes to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be in December, if you recall. When I first got here, it was actually before the holidays, and that was always a time crunch.
Yeah, and then I think they did January.
Right.
Yeah. Any other comments or feedback?
I guess the question for me is, like March, the snow would pretty much be gone, because I think the earlier, if the earlier you can celebrate anything, sorry, I think that March would be better, just because the earlier you can celebrate anything, I think is good.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good celebration for the town and all the accomplishments, so I think in March, the end of March, or March would be good.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do early March because we still get some snowstorms then. And
Yes.
we have gotten some April 1st storms.
That's true. Okay, well, it sounds like regarding timing, we're circling around late March. I think for me, what was most important was knowing that we're not going to do this in January, because if so, then, we need to start gearing up the planning in the next couple months, as opposed to, maybe later in the fall, like we had done last time. So I'm comfortable with a late March, late April, or late March to April timeframe. Regarding location, how do we feel about holding it in the Great Hall again and kind of following the same general playbook? We could try, something new, or we could go back to the DoubleTree. There are also a few options there.
I thought the Great Hall was great, and now that we figured out how to do it, it'll be even easier next year.
Yeah, the feedback was very positive. I think everybody really enjoyed the venue and thought it was a great place to have it. I'd be all for it. One of the things that I think is challenging is having to go out and raise money for this event, and obviously, this is a much more economical option for us.
Yeah, no, I think in the past we had been asking for sponsorships, all the way up to $1,000, and I think this year, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were asking 200 or 250 or something like that.
And I think to fall back on that, Zach, as we said, we went overboard on food and coffee, so I think even the sponsorships we got, if we look at that, we could probably even pare those down, and I think it's important that we're able to do something, not for cheap, but economically responsible with the
Right.
town's money and not using, those sponsorships that could go towards other things, sports, schools, all the things that all ask the same businesses for money regularly in town.
And it was better. That's my personal opinion, is it felt more like the EDC town, beautiful space. It was, a lot less expensive and better, I think.
You gotta start thinking about a new guest speaker, too.
Right. Yeah. Yep. No, we
Karen's
do.
been doing
Yeah.
it for all of 5 years that I can recall, so long.
Yeah, since its inception.
I think
So,
she's done all 8
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Well, then it sounds like to me that regarding the venue, people are comfortable with us planning for the Great Hall again next year, and so we'll proceed accordingly. There's not a lot of work that I need to do in the next month or two, but like I said, it's good to know, because if we were going to try to go back to the DoubleTree, we want to start booking that date and having that reserved sooner. Now I guess we can move to just general feedback, other improvements, things to do differently. I think now as well, if we want to start spitballing ideas for a new keynote speaker, that would be helpful to me as well. Just people to reach out to early to say, hey, we're thinking about, or we're doing this event. We do it every year. We're probably going to need a new keynote this year. Would you be interested? Those kinds of conversations.
So I think you touched, before we get to the keynote speaker, I think you touched upon it briefly. The food, I think we overestimated what we would need for that, so we should make note of that for next year. I don't think we need to obviously offer as much as what we had.
Well, the senior center seemed very happy. When I showed up later that morning, they were very excited to see me, so.
I think we gave some to the fire department too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fire department, no, they didn't want to take it.
Oh, they didn't take it?
Yeah, they said
No,
they
they
get
get
so much
chunks.
food that
Yeah.
they said they can't, eat it all
Yeah.
that comes in, so, but the senior center
Yeah.
took it happily and moved on in their days.
Yeah. And that'll help too, I think, with, just logistically, in the morning we were running around picking up coffee, picking up all sorts of
Stuff.
pastries from the different,
Make it a little bit easier.
yeah. Anyone else have any comments on the food or anything we should be doing, want to consider to do differently?
You could always look to maybe have somebody cater it.
Yeah.
I think Kim Foster, sort of late in the planning process, had suggested we reach out to Assabit. I think at that point, we had kind of already made our decision and already been moving forward on food, but they could be an affordable and quality catering option if we want to
They
investigate.
do an
that.
outstanding job. They'll charge it per person or whatever, but their students would actually serve and whatnot too, if you wanted them to.
That's a great idea.
You might want to approach them in the fall, Zach, if we're going to do that.
Yeah, I reached out, it took I reached out to them, but once again, it took a little while for them to get back, because I got in a phone system that tied me through, and by that point in time, we had already kind of headed in one direction, so when they got back to me, I said, well, thank you very much, but, we've already committed to going in different ways, so,
Yeah,
but it's definitely an option.
You just have to get it on that calendar soon. They're because of the timing with students and whatnot, so
Sure.
don't make it during vacation time. You'll never get them.
Anything else in regards to the food? Any other comments? ideas? No? All right, so we'll look into the catering at Assabet. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it's outstanding, because you're sending community, they're apt to want to do it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah.
One thing to think about with food is because you don't have tables, people are less likely to take the type of food that you might think of that would come on a plate, because it's
Right.
difficult to handle.
Right.
Coffee and simple things like pastry are probably about it,
Yeah.
because there's no table.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Thank you. What about keynote speaker? Any thoughts or ideas on that?
I think we should tell the newly elected lieutenant governor that this is part of the deal.
That's right. Karen has kind of set a precedent, so,
And who knows where Karen may be. We may want to invite her back in her
Right.
new role.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure we could, assuming she's reelected, but somebody like Hannah Kane, I'm sure would be willing to come and,
And we're gonna have a new senator
Do
next
that
year
role.
by that point because of the realignment of the district.
Mike
Yeah.
Moore.
Yeah.
I
Mike
think
Moore.
Moore. thank
Mike
you,
Moore.
yeah. So there'll be other options
Yeah.
of different politicians potentially.
yeah,
He's good at attendance, or he has been
Yeah.
visually, so I'm sure he'd be happy to be here.
yeah.
I think somebody had also mentioned, and Rod, this might have been you actually, it was Secretary Keneally, who's the head of the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. It's not a,
Be a good one.
He'd be a good choice, too.
Okay. Anything else? I think we have enough to go by and get started on and start
Mhm.
thinking about things for next year. Obviously, I think we ought to kind of back into a date when we want to start doing the votes on the companies for the awards, because we want to make sure we give Westboro TV enough time to put together the videos.
sounds good. Oh, actually, one last thing that I did want to mention before we move on from this topic is the awards. How did people feel about the types of awards that we gave out this year? And is there any interest in changing them for the future year, or should we keep them consistent? Personally, I feel that I guess the elected awards went really well, and especially I think that Hall of Fame award is one that gets more powerful the longer you have it in the running. But I know that in the past, having looked at all the former winners, that there was some variability in terms of what awards were handed out each year, and so I just wanted to take the temperature on whether or not there's any interest in doing that again this year, or if we're good to just kind of plan as if those are the 6 awards that we're giving, and work from there.
The 6 that were selected seemed to represent the town really well, and I loved sending those 2 awards, Civic Pride and the Hall of Fame, out to the community. And it raised awareness too, because the people who were nominated then went to social media and spread the word that they were nominated, and it was very engaging with the community, who may not even know that we're here and what we're doing. So I really like that. Great idea.
Yeah. I think we keep it consistent.
I agree.
We spent some time going over and
Yeah.
narrowing it down. I think we did. I think all the due diligence has been done now. You just have to rinse and repeat.
Great.
Yeah.
And
That is-
obviously, you could leave it open if there's a year where you didn't feel there was a Hall of Fame
Yeah.
quality business, or, whatever business, a new large project, for some reason there's not one out there, then you could always have the ability
Yeah.
to,
Right.
swim,
'em up.
flibble something in there and change it around.
Great. Well, it sounds like we're pretty comfortable with how it went last year, and then we can plan accordingly to do a very similar event with a similar process this year. That is the answer that I was privately hoping for, because I think, as Holly had pointed out, a lot of the due diligence has been done, and so I think we're in a really good place for that.
The other thing I would think is, on the voting itself, I think having a ballot, is some way we can fill it out as a group, rather than, I think we did like a live vote, which is, good and bad in some ways, because people can't, people might not feel comfortable voting in whatever direction they go in for a business, one way or the other, whether they feel like they're being favoriting someone they know or not know. We have a ballot that just kind of comes out, just like we do the the Hall of Fame and the Civic Choice Award. It wasn't a vote by us. It was 300 people voted one way, and that's who got the award. So it made sense, I think.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'll have to check with Christy and the select board's office to confirm if that's something that we can do. From an open meeting law perspective, typically any votes that this body takes, even if they're something as informal as giving out an award, need to be public record. But I also think that would be great. I think it would also make it easier because then we don't need to take up meeting time to do that.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else, Zach, as it relates to the EDC Year in Review Award celebration?
That is it for me. Although I do have a bunch of pictures that I've been meaning to distribute. I'll try and send, if there are any members in the pictures, I'll try and get those over to you. I also need to get them over to the winners as like a take home. But they came out really well.
Excellent. Great. All right, so next on the agenda is the EDC fiscal year 23 goal setting. And that's you again, Zach.
Okay, just give me a minute.
There we go.
Figure this out. Okay, so as we discussed last time, I took a first stab at setting out what the goals would be for the EDC in this year, specifically leaning on the master plan. So I know that last time the meeting went really long, and then Jim and a few other colleagues had to leave early. But Jim, I'm glad you're here because I would really appreciate your input and guidance on kind of which master plan initiatives we consider to prioritize. We can start by looking back at what I had proposed. The first is to continue implementing the LRP initiatives, and we're expected to complete about 2 to 3 projects a year. I think the next ones in the pipeline are Wayfinding is a phase 2 initiative that we will start working on. We actually just submitted a grant application through the Community One Stop for Growth portal for technical assistance for wayfinding design for that project. And then we also have 2 projects that we received allocations from the Economic Development Revolving Account by town meeting for, which are the minority and women-owned business study. And I've already talked to a couple vendors and consultants who might be able to work with us on that project. And the kind of Shop Westboro punch card campaign, which in my mind, I have been targeting the date for that to be sometime in the winter, hopefully to align with the winter stroll and some of the other activity that goes on then. But so that would be goal number 1. Goal number 2 is revitalizing EDC outreach. I think, that was a goal for this past year. I think we'd all agree that we're not all the way there yet. Specifically, I need to start scheduling more ambassador meetings to resume that piece of outreach, as well as hosting a few events for businesses, developers, and real estate like we've discussed in the past, similar to the Brokers Brunch that we had a few years ago, and similar to just 2 or 3 weeks ago. We worked with the Board of Health and the Select Board's office to put on an information session on the plastic bag reduction bylaw, or those upcoming changes that would become effective on June 20th, pending approval from the Attorney General. So the more that we can do things like that to be a value add to businesses, I think the better, especially when they're informational or when they bring people together who might not always connect. The third and fourth are 2 initiatives that I pulled from the master plan. And my methodology for picking these 2 was to look at the master plan initiatives where the Economic Development Committee was an implementation leader, and take the ones that were high priority on the shortest timeline. And so this initiative is action item ED 2-8, which is working with specific targeted areas where retail and restaurants already thrive to develop smaller walkable green spaces and small destination areas beyond just the downtown center. I think this is a good one because I think something that meets the bar for this are things like parklets, and parklets, in downtown and potentially in larger shopping centers that are on Route 9. I also think this is a good one because our focus has been a lot on the downtown businesses and our town center. And so I think the more that we can do something for the businesses that aren't in a town center, the better. And then goal number 4 is implementing master plan. I put 2 here because I think they're 2 different use cases of the same process, 2-5 and 2-6, which The first one is exploring the potential to introduce additional food and entertainment amenities. And then the second is recruiting more health-forward businesses focused on enhancing community health and wellness. The reason why I feel comfortable grouping these is because they're both really recruitment action items, trying to do outreach to businesses that aren't in Westboro to try and bring them into Westboro with these specific, I guess, segments as target areas. You know, and so I think that's something that we can tackle and something that I think we can, you know, I would love to do more of is some more of this recruitment. The fifth is exploring opportunities to expand the Business Assistance Grant Program. I know this is something that this board has talked about a lot, especially over the past couple months when the process has gotten more competitive, is looking at ways to expand the funding for that program, be it going to town meeting and asking for more funding for the program, or, you know, trying to find other funding sources that we might be able to leverage here. I'll pause for a second and let that sink in. And I think in my mind, the two goals here that are most, you know, I guess up for, or I guess that I'm the least confident about are, you know, goals 3 and 4, which are these master plan initiatives. So what I've done, and the text is really small and I apologize for that, is I've pulled out the action items where the EDC is an implementation leader in the master plan on this little chart that are all high priority. So each of these items are action items where the EDC is the implementation leader either by itself or with another board or department, such as the Community Development Department, and these are the descriptions of those initiatives. So if you guys all want to take a look at that now, I also have the full implementation matrix, thanks to Jim, who had sent it to me in Excel the other day, and I could pull that up if there's a, you know, master plan initiative that might not be high priority that you want to, you know, prioritize for the next year. But otherwise, I'll give you some time to take a look at this, and then I hate to put you on the spot, but Jim, I'd love to invite you to, you know, say some things about where the master plan is in its implementation process. I know that the planning board is working with VHB to form an implementation committee, and, you know, I'd love to get your perspective on where you think the EDC might start in terms of implementing some of these master plan items. But like I said, I'll try and zoom in as much as I can.
Zach, quickly on that too, outdoor seating, you didn't mention that. The
Yes.
outdoor seating policy.
Yes, that's actually on the agenda. I was going to give an update about that later. But yeah, we have some exciting news about that as well. And then actually, I'm going to move here so that I can try and maximize.
That's a good point, Jim, that Zach had brought up. Would that be implemented, those 3 and 4, as part of the master plan implementation in conjunction with?
I'm assuming 3 and 4 are 3 and 4 there with health forward business and incentives or grants.
No, so I think Fred's referring to goals 3 and 4 on the previous page, which
Right.
would all be master plan initiatives. It was a combination of introducing additional food and entertainment amenities, as well as recruiting health forward businesses. That's kind of like one business recruitment goal. And then the other goal was around, it's actually not here because the EDC is not the implementation lead, the Community Development Department is, but the EDC is a supporting partner. It was around, you know, kind of creating walkable green destination areas in commercial centers that are outside of the downtown area. I think it specifically mentions like El Basha, like that, I think High Point Plaza there.
Sure, so if I could address that, those are really good things that you picked out, Zach, and they are definitely priorities in the master plan. For many years, leading up to the master plan, the planning board wants to revitalize the downtown, and that was really the #1 focus of the economic development portion of the master plan chapter. The desire to fill vacant spaces, vacant storefronts, create a more active downtown after hours, particularly after the business day closes, to create more housing opportunities to support those businesses. So I think it was goal, can you go back to that previous page? I think it was goal 2, the first goal that would have been the EDC, implement an initiative, target areas, retail, restaurant, thrive. Okay, so it's actually the second one. Bay State has been an area of town that was focused on in the master plan that has still vacancy in it. as well as some of the storefronts along downtown, in the downtown streets, East and West Main Street particularly. I think that the EDC can really assist in that. And that actually also works with goal number 1 here, the initiatives from the LRRP program, as well as outreach. I think they all tie together to revitalize the downtown. And I think that if we do help to revitalize the downtown, as far as the residents are concerned, and as far as the small business community is concerned, it would be a major win for the town. Because the 30 years I've been here, people continually ask me, how can we fill downtown storefronts? How can we bring more walking activity in the evenings and during the daytime to the downtown? And a missed opportunity, I think, all along, and it's because of the owner of Bay State, has been our relationship with that development. Because there's vacant storefront there, there's a residential presence there, and we've really struggled to make Bay State an extension of the downtown. People don't walk to it unless they live there. And that I try to walk there from my office to get a coffee or lunch sometime, but that needs to happen, and it's not happening. We need to find a way to make that happen. And as far as areas outside the downtown, I think that's a really good point, but I'm not sure how to form that. I'm not sure, I'm hoping that the implementation committee comes up with a way to identify how to form that goal.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really great great guidance, Jim. And you know, I think that's why I wanted to, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I wanted to start with you because I think you do a great job of contextualizing, you know, where we've been, especially from a planning perspective, you know, where some of these initiatives have come from and the spirit behind them, and which ones are, I guess, actionable right now versus something like the outside of town center ones, which, you know, might need a little more refinement before we can actually hit the ground on those.
So the outside the downtown, and you mentioned High Point Plaza,
yeah,
on Connector Road, that's always been an area that the planning board has focused on. And with the revitalization of some of the properties on Computer Drive, hopefully with the Amazon project coming forward, there'll be employees that want to walk to those food services that are there. With the new trail system that we're trying to put in place, hopefully more people will walk to those plazas. They're isolated. There's not an easy way to get there. If you don't work on Computer or Technology Drive, you're probably not going to walk there. And even though you do work there, it's not an easy walk. So we have to find a way to get people to that little plaza.
So given that discussion, what it sounds like to me is that action or goal number 4 here, as presented, you know, the kind of combination of action items 2.5 and 2.6 sounds like something that we would, you know, that would be, you know, aligned, or that's addressable, and something that, you know, the EDC could be doing over the next year, and that would advance the master plan goals. Maybe goal number 3, ED 2-8, is one that we could go back to the drawing board and find, you know, another master plan item to address. And Jim, based on what you're saying, I wonder if this would be a good one. This is actually a land use goal, but the EDC is listed as the implementation leader for this goal, is exploring the use of incentives to promote policies to require active ground floor uses for tenant spaces fronting public rights of way within the downtown area. Based on you know, the discussion that's been had and what you've said, it seems to me like this one might be more appropriate than the one that I had penciled in. But obviously, you know, I want to open it up to the rest of the board to share their thoughts or, you know, interests. Because at the end of the day, this is, you know, kind of your opportunity to say, this is what we want to be working on over the next year. And, you know, I want you to be excited and invested in that as well.
So can I just say something about that? So for a long time, the planning board has struggled with how to bring about regulatory land use tools like zoning to incent the businesses that we want downtown that will bring more foot traffic. So right now, the downtown has a lot of businesses like realtors, insurance companies, banks, which we need to have in town, but which are destinations, which you, in a bank, you might use it once a week, and a realtor, you might use it, you know, once a year, if that would be a lot. Some of those businesses don't create foot traffic. So how do we create restaurants, retail, some service industries that you're going to visit at least once a week, if not multiple times a week? That's what we want in the downtown. That's what makes a vibrant, thriving downtown that's going to be walkable. Part of the reason people don't walk downtown is the uses aren't there. It's not that we don't have sidewalks. It's not that it isn't a pretty downtown. It's all of those things, but we just don't have the uses that attract foot traffic. So we have to come up with a way to incent those uses by defining the types of uses that we want to attract, not by saying that we want restaurants and retail. We know that. But how can we incent those uses by restricting the other uses?
It's an excellent question.
And if there were an easy answer, you know, with all the other assets that we have downtown, you know, I'm sure we would have done it already. But, you know, I think that could be a question that is worth, you know, the EDC's time, research, and thought. And, you know, to me, at the end of this goal, like if the EDC were to pick this particular item as a goal, you know, the end result might not necessarily be, you know, all the way to a policy change or all the way to, you know, actually reimagining the uses in downtown, but it might be something more addressable, like a research project or, you know, an exploration into the ways that other, you know, towns and communities, both in Massachusetts and in the United States, have used land use techniques to incent the types of uses that they want to have in their community. And then, you know, something like that from there, we could have a discussion with the planning board about which ones, you know, are viable and amenable and what some of the challenges or issues are with them. But I think that would be a good start because, you know, I think this is, like Jim had said, a really important question and one that, you know, clearly over the years, you know, everybody's wanted to do something about, but we've really struggled to turn into real action. And even just getting a start, like a research project or something like that, I think would be significant progress, you know, to that goal.
So one thing you might consider, just to start to kick this off, is with your grant program, you might consider restricting the grants to those types of uses you want. So if in the downtown you want restaurants or retail, you make that grant program only available to restaurants and retail.
Yep, that's certainly an option. I do like the idea of doing some research as far as what, not just locally here, but even other areas throughout the country and see what they've done and what they've come up with. So my thought would be that this is a good one to focus on.
So if I may on that, just to give you an example, before I left Lexington, they actually did something similar. What they did is they made specifically realtors, banks, and there might have been a third one. They actually made it a special permit process and then made it kind of a heavy lift. So it wasn't a buy right option anymore in the downtown area.
Yeah.
Just for that reason, because they struggle with those uses.
Yeah.
Albeit they're nice uses, but not in your downtown. They don't, as Jim had pointed out, they don't have the walkability. Right. So there's some examples of that out there.
And I'm sure Fred, you know, with his experience in Lexington, will be able to help us at least get a good starting point on that topic. Not to sign you up for something, Fred.
That's right. That's what I'm here for.
Well, in that case.
I think the zoning is a big part of it. I don't know how we would be able to institute like some kind of financial incentives. I mean, an example, the building that I rent from for my business downtown is being sold, and it looks like an HVAC company might be taking it over, in which case there's 5 businesses that are all like destination businesses and walking that are going to be displaced, and I may end up having to move out of Westboro. So, and I think that happens more and more. I think we have to figure out exactly what Jim said. If we want to see those types of businesses, then we have to figure out like a concrete way of it's incentivizing, doing something, but it's difficult because, you know, you have people that own these spaces and, you know, they're going to go to where the money is, and that's a no-brainer. So
I think it's definitely a difficult question, and I do think it's almost like a two-sided coin. Is there's one side of it, which is land use policy and land use regulation, where you can incentivize or even disincentivize certain types of uses, like what Fred was talking about, implementing a special permit for certain types of uses that, you might not want to see as many of, or,
Right.
Versus the other side of the coin, something that Jim is very familiar with, are overlays, and using overlays to incentivize certain types of uses or certain type of development that you want, in exchange for helping to advance other goals in the community. And then on the third side of the coin as well is you can do as much with zoning and land use regulation as you want, but if the economics on a broad scale don't make sense, then it might not matter. So I think one of the things that I've observed, at least, and a way that I would attack this goal potentially would be having a regulatory land use study and looking at some of our options from that side of the coin, as well as looking at some of our more literal financial incentives, like Jim was talking about the grant program, and looking at ways in which we can tailor those kinds of things, or even create new things to encourage, to make the economics more favorable for the types of development that we want to do. So, for example, a big one is grease traps. We talk about restaurants and grease traps a lot. We want to attract restaurants downtown. There are a handful of properties that do have grease traps, but a lot of the vacancies that we have do not have a grease trap. And so it makes the economics much harder for a restaurateur to move into those spaces if there is no grease trap, because that's a tens of thousands of dollar project just to open. And so, if we did expand the grant program, something that we might, do on the other side of the coin beyond looking into land use is saying, all right, every year we're going to give a $20,000 grant or something, a really big bet on infrastructure. So on somebody who wants to do a grease trap. And then that combined with, looking into ways in which we might, incentivize or disincentivize certain uses through land use techniques, could create a really good recipe for the downtown. And so I would think that if we look at this goal, we want to look at both sides of the things. And so, because it does say incentives, and then it also says, promoting policies. And so to me, that makes it think that to get to what you're getting at, Holly, we would need to take a pretty broad view of this and look at both the economics and the regulation side of things.
Any other comments?
I really agree with what you said, Jim, and tying the grant program to these goals to overlay that on top of the work that was done to come up with metrics, because when I think about the last couple of rounds and then look at this list, I would think, boy, I wish we'd done more for Nurse Farm, and really full out supported their initiative to create outdoor seating, because that is spot on. It meets a few of these goals. Mm-hmm. So, just a thought going forward to look at this and overlay that on the grants that come up for vote.
One of the things we could do is, I don't know if the Westboro grease trap rules have changed, but it's basically double what the state requires. So when we put in a cafeteria for 50 Washington Street that basically serves 5 lunches a week, we had to put the same size grease trap that we used in Framingham in a 350,000 foot building. We had to blast ledge, and it was really expensive. And I think that used to be the chicken restaurant over here had to, when the Chinese restaurant went in, they had to, put in a big grease trap. And if you want to encourage restaurants, I think maybe enforcing proper maintenance of the grease trap is more important than, I don't know if there's any basis, any data behind this, or someone just said, if the state wants, 5,000 gallons, in Westboro it's going to be 10,000 gallons without, so if, not just downtown, but if you want to attract, things like that are something we could look into or advocate. Is it necessary? Is there a reason? Instead of subsidizing it, why not make it reasonable?
Yeah, and I think that's, I don't think as a board we're educated well enough to comment on that, and it might be worth having somebody from the DPW come in and talk to us about grease traps and how they're coming about their calculations that appear to, if what you're saying is accurate, that are much more stringent than what the state is requiring.
Yeah, especially from my experience in an office building, how much use does that get, really, right?
Right.
So I'll speak to that a little bit. So we do have some pilot programs out there, the COOP being one,
Right.
that the DPW has agreed to do some sampling to see how that works. So they've relaxed that requirement a little bit. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. When are they due to open, do you know?
Well, I was going to defer to our little section, but we can talk
that's
about
right,
that
we
at
can-
that
yeah,
point.
we'll hold on.
I don't know if I updated Zach, but I'll update it during that period.
And I think Toros ran into a problem a couple of years ago with they wanted to expand, but the grease trap was going to make it too expensive or something.
Who's that?
Toros, I think? No?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
And
was that?
just to build on that point, I think to look at the rules on the books and then what's the purpose behind them. So I know that I have looked into expanding in offering outdoor seating, building a deck for outdoor seating, which also seems to meet several of these goals. But I can't because I have come up against the edge of my impermeable. But what's the purpose of the green space law? I don't think it's to prevent a deck and outdoor seating. The law prevents me from doing it. So just looking at the purpose of the laws on the books and then using that information to make decisions accordingly, I think would be helpful.
And my experience is if you put in impervious blocks and stuff, it still doesn't count. When we put in picnic areas or little areas for people to sit as smoking shelter, we had to go in the parking lot and rip up
Right.
2-to-1 parking spaces. And we had to spend $5,000 in the engineering to do the calculations, to put in a little patio the size of in between, in front here.
Yeah, so just looking at the purpose behind the regulations, which are important. I mean, I love the green space requirement and having the beautiful green spaces, but just using information about the purposes behind perhaps exceptions and acting accordingly.
And depending where you are in Westboro, 60% open space is
Hard.
a lot.
It's really
It's
hard.
it's more than just
That's
about
what
anywhere I
got.
can
That's
think
what you
of.
got. Yeah, it's difficult.
And
It's really
Westboro's
hard.
unique with open space because a lot of towns use like a floor area ratio instead of open space.
Okay, so, any other comments?
I just had two. One, I think the discussion about the downtown and Bay State specifically, you read the master plan and Bay State's all over it, so I think we should be cognizant of that. The other two is, one, I don't know how it would relate, but really seems like our website should be more active, and I don't know where that would fit into this, but and then the third was just, in terms of when I think about EDC, I think about how it relates to improving our tax base, and one of them on there is, how do we promote the vacant properties where there are potential for expansion outside of just retail and downtown. That would be the third one I would be thinking about.
Yeah, we used to have a property inventory of vacant spaces years ago. I think that's a great one to bring back up, to promote those vacant spaces. At least make the inventory available to anybody that's looking for a space.
And that may tie into the website.
Exactly. Can I go back to these two goals, I'm sorry, two of the goals, just for a second? Where you just were, Zach, same slide you just came from.
Sorry.
Right there, thank you. So the two bottom ones focus on entertainment, and entertainment has a direct relationship to activity downtown, not just because people walk to get to the entertainment, but because people will shop after going to the event or before going to the event. They'll have dinner before or after going to the event. And working with the Westboro Cultural Council to reinvigorate the spaces downtown around entertainment venues, like the Bay State Commons bandstand, for lack of a better word. Having more events there, working with the Cultural Council, will bring more business to the downtown vendors. So I think that's another thing that this commission should do is work with the Cultural Council to get a schedule of events, to encourage them to have more events, and to distribute that schedule to our local businesses and publish it more on the website so that people will know about it and then spend more money downtown.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, that's actually something that we're very interested in doing as part of the council, so yeah, definitely.
Good.
Forgot that you were.
And just once, I'll just add, just one, not to lean on that Bay State company, I don't know who, I know the name, I see the signs, because it's for lease signs everywhere, but they're also everywhere I go in town, that same company has empty buildings everywhere, it seems like. So it seems like we need to work more with the landlords to make sure that they're being receptive to tenants, you know, to what they need. If you want to attract businesses, I guess the landlords have to be part of the process. And if you talk to people in town who their landlords are, they're not always the most responsive people that go in. So it's not always exciting for someone to come into town to work here. I work with Stonegate. I've had problems with my dumpster in different areas like that. I know I've talked to Yummy Mummy, who's had problems with the parking lot over there in that place. So, Holly's talked. So it's this. Now I've mentioned 3 or 4 landowners in this town that aren't necessarily responsive to helping businesses grow in the town either. So I think it's the town's responsibility to maybe, put a little pressure on them to be more open for us to be part of this plan as well.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for the comments. I think, ideally, I would like to leave this meeting with a sense of which of the goals we actually want to, work on over the next year. I think the discussion has been great, and I think that we've covered a lot of ground between, vacancies for, downtown businesses, vacancies for much larger commercial properties, out in our industrial corridors, the website, landlord relationships and things like that. But I think obviously that's a full plate of work for probably longer than a year without all the other goals and stuff that we're working on. I'd love to be able to stack hands on some goals for this year. And it sounded like where we left it that we were comfortable with goals 1, 2, 4, and 5, and 3 was where we might plug something in. I know we had some discussion around this goal. After the conversation that we had, do we still want to plug this in there, or do we want to try to look at something else? And also, to be clear, the goal that we pursue, it doesn't have to be something from the master plan. If there's something outside of that scope that you would want to address, that's up to you. I think, a number of our LRP projects over the next year as well will be addressing some things in the master plan. So I know Jim had mentioned this, identify underutilized public and or private spaces within the downtown that could be used. I think part of that is definitely working with the Cultural Council, specifically on, what types of things to put in there. But for some of the private spaces, one of our projects from the LRP is a vacant storefront project, which is prioritized for phase 2. And so that, I think, addresses some of the spirit of this goal. Similarly, ED 5-1, the town approved Arpa funding for a working capital grant program for businesses, specifically those that have been adversely impacted by COVID and might not have gotten funding through other programs. So I think this is something that we will be working on in the near future. And all of that is stuff, kind of outside of what will be our core 5 goals here.
So we were talking about replacing or inserting, I can't.
It's okay, I can log in.
3-3?
Yeah,
Into
3-3.
goal number 3 on the prior page, right?
Yes.
I would just say we may need to be flexible, so the Master Plan Implementation Committee is just beginning their work. And they're prioritizing all the projects, and in the master plan is a 15-year plan. So certainly we want to hit the ground running, but they may come back with recommendations and ask us for assistance in projects that we haven't considered. So I think these make sense. I think we just may need to be willing to be flexible if they ask us to come back and sort of take a different tact.
I think that's a great point, Sean, and I appreciate the context as well.
Let me just say a little bit about that. Great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because now you've jogged my memory. So when the implementation committee is formed, I'm sure there'll be a representative from the EDC. So whatever would be a primary goal from the EDC, that should be advanced. So I don't think it would be wrong to say that 3-3, if that were your primary goal, would be advanced to the early stages of the implementation plan. So I think this group is doing the right thing to discuss what's really important to you, and then make that a primary goal in the implementation plan.
Any other comments? Do we feel that we should be inserting 3-3 in place?
Why don't you leave it more open-ended and just make that fifth goal to be determined once the master plan has been developed more?
More discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, then you can,
Perfect.
then you can take whatever that goal may be and kind of tailor it to that.
Good idea.
I think you could literally make it support the master plan implementation committee.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
In which case, would anyone like to make a motion to approve 5 goals, these 1 through 3, 5, and then a goal around supporting the master plan implementation committee for fiscal year 23?
Was it 3 we were keeping or 4 we were keeping?
Sorry, 4 we're keeping. Thank you for correcting me. Good catch.
Make a motion to support what Zach just said.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
I want to make sure Kristen got that.
I'm sorry, who?
Sean?
Did you get the motion, Kristen? That was pretty, okay, good.
Whatever Zach said.
2, 3,
All right,
1, 4,
great.
6.
I think now that we're behind schedule, Rod.
I jinxed us. I had sent Todd and Rod an email last night that I didn't think that this meeting would go over schedule, and here we are.
So next on the agenda is to discuss changes to the EDC Business Assistance Grant application. And Zach, you were presenting that as well.
Yep. I'll try and go a little bit quicker through this one. So we made the grant rubric. As a result of the grant rubric, in order to capture some of the information that we would need to score the applications, we need to make some changes to the EDC's Business Assistance Grant Program actual application and program overview. Fred, John, and I, the staff who review each of the applications for completeness throughout the year, had also been tracking various changes or points of clarification to make in the overview and application. And so I've summarized those changes here for your approval. The first are changes with respect to program eligibility. So we are defining a new business as having opened within 12 months of their application submission. The reason why that matters is because new businesses are the only type of project eligible for rental assistance, so that could use their grant for rent. But previously it's been undefined as to what counts as a new business, in terms of when you've opened. Additionally, we're adding a deadline for reimbursements, for which expenses must be from the last year, and we're requiring that all funds be expended within a year from the award date. So the reason why we have a lot of these is because the grant program is both a forward-looking program as well as a reimbursement program. But obviously we don't want to be reimbursing people for things that happened 5 years ago or 3 years ago. And so we're proposing that if you're applying, and because we review projects on a quarterly basis, it's totally possible that you might have done work a month ago and are applying for the grant for that today, that everything that you're applying for or being reimbursed for must have been spent within the last year of your application. As well, if you're applying for something in the future, you must spend those funds within a year from your award date. We removed the 3-year lease requirement. In the rubric, folks get weight for having a 2-year lease or an option to extend. And I think in a couple meetings in the past, we've discussed how it might be better to be more flexible with respect to the lease requirement, given how, real estate and commercial real estate for retail is changing, and folks tend to be signing up for shorter term leases than they might have in the past. Additionally, we removed the requirement that applicants attend the EDC meeting, but state that they are strongly encouraged to do so. I think it only benefits them to come and, answer your questions and, provide an overview of the project. But I think with the rubric, it's maybe less important than it had been in the past. Project eligibility. So we made some changes to what types of uses of funds are allowed and not allowed with grant funding. Specifically, we added that general maintenance and repair is explicitly prohibited, and we further defined working capital as specifically prohibit replacing equipment. So a lot of these are operational expenses that we feel like are not in the spirit of the grant program, encouraging businesses to grow or expand rather than offsetting operational costs. Additionally, we made some revisions and deletions. Specifically, we removed building code corrections from the definition of expansion projects and co-compliance from eligible uses of funds. Along the same vein, that seems to be more of an operational expense, not really a growth play. We changed expansion and relocation projects such that they don't need to increase their floor area. So something that we had discussed and observed is that a business might relocate or expand in ways that aren't expanding their gross floor area, but also, add to their revenue potential. So for example, if I'm a business that was previously located in an alleyway and I move to a similarly sized location on a main street, just by improving the visibility, you're helping the business grow and expand, and that wouldn't be reflected in a requirement that requires actual floor area expansion. So right now our program requires, for expansion and relocation projects, a 10% increase to floor area for them to be eligible. Parking lot surface improvements was amended to parking lot expansions along the same vein, trying to get away from operational expenses and more towards like growth plays. And then sidewalks or public walkways are no longer prohibited uses of funds. So you might be able to use, what this piece unlocks is that you might be able to use grant funds for, like an outdoor customer area or something like that. We made a few changes to the application. Specifically, we added a bunch of questions, these 5 questions here, which we need the answers to in order to score each application on the rubric. And then we also require that in addition to describing their intended use of grant funds, that applicants actually itemize all expenses. That makes it very much easier for us as staff to review the application and figure out what exact item to tie a grant award to. Because when we fill out a purchase order for the grant, we need to tie it to a specific tangible item. And then lastly, we made a lot of clarifications around reapplicants. So I know we've gotten a ton of questions this year around this, but we've clarified that businesses may only receive 1 award from the EDC per fiscal year. So you can only get 1 award per fiscal. We've clarified that if you have gotten an award, you may reapply to the program in a different fiscal year for a new project. So it's not like you're one and done, you get 1 award, you can go away. You just have to wait until the new fiscal year. And then we have prohibited award recipients from reapplying for the same project. So if you get $2,000 for a project, you can't reapply for that same project at the next quarter. And we've also clarified that if an applicant did not receive funding, it may reapply. So if you don't receive funding, you may reapply, but the onus is on you to actually resubmit the application. And then lastly, we have added a bit that if there are no applicants in the 4th quarter, or not enough applicants to fully expend the EDC's 4th quarter funds, the EDC may allocate that money to previously unfunded projects. And that process would not require folks to reapply or come before the board, but it's really kind of like an emergency lever where if we have extra money, obviously we want to get that in the hands of businesses that need it. And so, if there's extra money in Q4, we can look back at the applications we've received and determine who might, get a very nice note in June. That is my overview. I'll pause now for any questions or concerns. But otherwise, we will amend the application and then make that live for this upcoming quarter.
Any questions? Comments?
Just a quick comment. I think that's great work. I think that this is something we've needed for a while, and I'm happy to see that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've done a great job with the program as far as getting the word out and also, putting together the rubric and giving us a baseline as to how to kind of distribute these grants. I think we're in a good place going forward. So thank you for all your work on that. If no other questions, do I hear a motion to, can I get a motion to approve these changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the EDC grant program proposed changes.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Great. Thank you, Zach.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Conservation Commission fee schedule. Sherry?
Morning, everyone. So I just came, I'm awful at these. I came back to represent to you the findings after we had our discussion. I went to the commission on May 10th. I explained to them the discussion we had and how some of it was positive, but that the abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, or the ANRAD, there were some questions on that, and that the fee seemed a little high based on linear feet. So after taking that to consideration, the commission decided to change that and make it like a notice of intent. So it's basically whatever the state deems as a fee, half of that would come back to the town. So it lowers that cost significantly. Because there's not really a project attached to that, the commission agreed with all of you that doesn't quite make sense in that fashion. I think I took that from other towns that see a lot more ANRADs. I went back in my data, I have 4 since I've been hired in the last 8 years, so we really just don't get an awful lot of them, so it totally made sense to bring it backwards towards that. So after having that discussion, the commission took a vote to adopt those fees and present them to the selectmen for approval. So they would love to have your support with that, but they're hoping to move forward with the select board now.
Great. Any questions? Mark?
I don't really understand, it's whatever half of whatever the state charges?
Yeah, I can explain a little more. So when you do the notice of intent filing, so Wetlands Form 3 for the instructions on, it's like the 3rd page. It does it by category. So category 1 is like a single-family house, controlled vegetation, resource improvement, septic work, monitoring wells, new agricultural activities is $110. So it would be half of that if that was one of your categories. And it goes up from there. So the next category is category 2, which is parking lots, beach nourishment, water level variations. It starts to get really technical. Driveways for single-family homes, that's $500. Category 3 is more like road construction or subdivisions. That's $1,050. Category 4 is for closures of landfills, bridges, large hazardous waste alteration projects. So that's $1,450. Category 5 and 6 are based on linear feet. So one of them's for working on like docks and piers. We really don't have a lot of that. I don't think I've seen one. And category 6 is how often I get a category 6. Oh, category 6 is for ANRADs. So it's based on $2 per linear feet. So it would be $1 per linear foot if you had a category 6. So that's how the other ANRADs came through the town. They were based on linear feet already, and it was $2. So the other ANRADs that I had, I can find it, like the last ANRAD I had, the state fee would have been $1,000 for the town. The applicant paid the state $2,000. And that was maybe 2 years ago that I had that one.
Gotcha, but you're saying those are charged by the state?
That's the
just-
state's fee,
okay.
yeah. So the state dictates that fee, and you tell the state how many of those categories you're going to have in your project. So if you're building a subdivision, you're going to have category 4 because you're building a road. But then if you have houses attached to it, you'll have 2 category 2s or 10 category 2s, however many houses you have. So it can get up there if you're planning a really big involved project. But if you're just adding a deck or simply doing an addition on the side of your building, it's maybe just one of those. So then the state says you send the town half of that. So we usually get, if it's a category 1, we'd get $75, give or take. And then the state wants an extra $12.50 for some reason. So
But we're not voting on those today?
no, that's just done by the state. So the applicant would pay all of that to the state or to the town, and now I'll make some sort of PDF or something that'll calculate it for the applicant, so they don't have to think about the math, so that they can just know, oh, and I owe the town, an extra $25 or $75 on average. So I worked it out for the last the last 3 notice of intents I had. One of them is 2925 Research Drive. They would pay an extra $1,575. The next one was a single-family house in Riverfront, and they had an addition, so they had 2 categories, so that would be $525. And the last one was a pool, and it would be $82.50.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, that sounds low. And 29 research, $1,000? I mean,
Well, so
that's like 60
that-
acres
That would be
and a
just,
lot of wetlands.
that would be the additional, so they
Right.
paid, the state, they gave $1,562.50. Then they gave the town wetlands transmittal fee, which has restrictions on what I can do with it, $1,587.50. And if we had this fee schedule, it would be another $1,575 for the town.
I mean,
But yeah,
if they
it's
did an ANRAD at $2 a foot,
that one's not that's for the 3 buildings.
Oh.
That's not the ANRAD. I didn't pull the ANRAD. The ANRAD would have been 4,400. No.
Okay.
They didn't do
well, I
an
know we
ANRAD.
did one at 5 Tech.
Yeah, I didn't, I
Yeah.
pulled one before that.
Hmm.
Yeah, but so right now for that project, if we're just talking about that one, I've put about 12 hours of time from the department in on that. We haven't even had 2 meetings on it. And we haven't permitted, we haven't done site inspections, so when you think about if it's a user fee to recoup the cost of our time for the department, that one's gonna eat it up so quickly.
Okay, any other questions? Anyone want to make a motion to submit a letter of support for the fees that are proposed?
I can make a motion to a letter of support from the Economic Development Committee to the Conservation Committee for their new fee schedules.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? All right.
Thank you so much.
Just one question, Sherry. When do you need that? When are you presenting before the board, the select board?
July 19th.
July 19th.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Real good, a couple
Really quick, I
days.
apologize, I should have asked it. If the state increases their fees, will the fees increase as well?
So based on the way it's written, it's based on the state fees. So whatever the state dictates in their form, so if they update their form, this would automatically update. It won't update the other fees that we have for the smaller permits. It would only be the notice of intent that would update. Because notice of intents are very complicated, that's why the state has that. The other permits that run through my department are smaller, that we just put a flat fee of $25 or $75 on those. So that wouldn't change.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good morning.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is an update on the outdoor customer area policy. Zach?
Great. So good news is that at its meeting at the end of May, the select board approved the draft outdoor customer area policy pending minor changes from council. So at this time, the policy is with town council, who is reviewing for any possible further changes or clarifications needed. But I'm optimistic that there won't be any major changes required by council. But so it's good to know the policy has been approved, and then Fred and I are starting to think through kind of the outreach strategy to businesses to make them aware of the policy, and to encourage those businesses that might have outdoor seating areas presently to go through the process. That's all I have on that, unless anyone has any questions.
No? All right, you're up again, Zach.
Great. Online business directory project. So as you may know, we had won a grant award to work with a IT developer to create a online business directory specifically for use in shop local campaigns and the like. We have been working with them since the end of April on this project, and we have signed off on final design for the project about a week ago, I think last week. At this point, we're moving into sort of our data collection phase, and so I will be reaching out to you probably later today with a flyer to distribute to your neighbors, your friends, tenants, to encourage them to sign up. The survey to actually get the information that we need for the online business directory should take less than a few minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes. So it's a really light lift. And the benefit is that you're in an online business directed by the town that we might be able to pair with other projects such as wayfinding or create Shop Westboro brochures to give to local hotels or other event destinations. And it's a more equitable platform than something like Google or Yelp. I mean, people have asked me multiple times, what's the difference in Google and Yelp? Well, on Google and Yelp, people pay for search engine optimization. And so actually, if you look on Google Maps right now, like New York Pie doesn't appear because it doesn't have as much optimization as some of the other businesses downtown, and so you'll miss certain things. Whereas this is an opportunity for everyone to kind of be on the same playing field and be part of our other shop local campaigns. So yeah, I will be in touch. I know that there's a handful of folks here who are downtown businesses. Or businesses in general, as well as real estate agents and property owners. And so we'll be leaning heavily on you to distribute this and get the message across to the folks in your sphere of influence.
Any questions?
Zach, I hate to put you on the spot on this. Can you send out to the committee what that?
The mock-ups?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could show them right now if folks want.
We have the time?
Yeah.
It's up to the chair, but it's kind of cool.
Just give me a moment.
I think the big push on this too is that it's free to the businesses. They don't have to pay for this, so it's kind of a no-brainer. They take 5-10 minutes to fill out the information, and the vendor for this is assured us too that I think it's monthly, albeit Zach can correct me on these, that if their website goes dead or something, we can take them off, and so it's not, we don't have a lot of businesses up there that may go defunct and we don't know about it.
So again, these are mock-ups, so it's not totally functional. But the idea is that this is the home page, the landing page, and so you can go to home, about, you can search by category. The actual language for these might be refined, but the idea is that you can filter by like an industry, so like home goods or salon services or something like that. Inclusivity, whether or not a business is minority-owned, veteran-owned, woman-owned, or even keywords, so like specific products. So you can type in like shoes, and this will bring up some of the folks in the directory who say that they sell shoes. You can also go to some high priority categories here, and then we could even feature businesses down here and stuff like that. You could add your own business here. Obviously, we want to get to a critical mass. Our goal is like at least 100 businesses in the directory by launch. The directory is expected to launch towards the end of July. I think the exact date is July 27th. And then we have to lock all data to send to them for the initial launch by July 10th. So about a month from now. But this is a general look and feel. Let me see if I can, flip through to some of these other mock-ups. So when you search, this is what's actually going to come up for your search results. Is so you can actually filter by distance, put in a location, and it'll filter only the ones within a certain radius of that location. You can sort by alphabetical, filter again by some of our inclusivity filters, and then each of these businesses, you can pop up and then click on them to pull up like an actual business page. But there are social media links, their website, phone number. And then actually, I think one of the coolest things is this map. So it'll actually generate a map of where the businesses that meet your search criteria actually appear in Westboro. This is just another example of search with like a different format for how the results are presented down there. This is if you had clicked on one of those on the landing page, there's different categories that appear, like featured categories. This is what it would look like if you clicked on one of those. And this is like a store page. So if you, after you click your search and you click on, let's say, Release Wellbeing Center, you might come up to this page, which has the location on the map, name, address, website, social media links, description of the business, products offered, and then maybe a few other subheadings here, as well as a link to the website. And then this is like the general about page about what the portal is, kind of where it came from, the LRP, all of that, with some nice pictures of Westboro over here. And then contact, this is the, kind of like the get in contact with us kind of page, where we have, you can see the EDC logo there. And then this is add your business. So once on the landing page you saw there's like that add your business thing. This is where that takes you. And so you can input all of the data that we would need to know to add you to the directory. And that is a bit of an overview.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I'm
Fabulous.
getting a little bit nervous about collecting all the information, but I think we'll get there. We still have a bit of time.
Yeah.
But
So you'll send out that email to the committee later with
Yes.
information that we can forward on to people we know, tenants.
yeah, tenants, neighbors, friends, anything would be.
Zach, are you scheduled to come back before the select board about this project, or?
I am not, but I would be happy to do so. Either I could show the design mock-ups, or we could come back at a later date when we might be able to play around in it or something like that.
Just a quick comment. Well, it's fabulous. Great work. I'm wondering, based on some of the objectives that you shared earlier, maybe to have a health and wellness category, if that's something that you want to highlight to attract businesses.
I think that's a great idea, and we actually might already. The ones that appear there are literally just like random
Got
word.
it.
I don't think they even map to the categories that in the survey
Okay.
I am asking for. But it's just really illustrative. But I think health and wellness is definitely one that we're going to have there.
Zach, if you need a hand in the next month, let us know.
I will be sure to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I can definitely help. I'm sure people can.
Yeah, I've got a list of businesses, so we're going to try and do a combination of, in-person and remote outreach.
Yeah.
So I'll actually probably do a fair bit of door knocking over the next month or so. So if any of you are willing and able, on a weekend or Friday afternoon or whenever you're free, that'll be very helpful, and I can apportion the list accordingly when you assign people categories, things like that.
Definitely.
Okay, Zach, you got one more update here.
Yes, ARPA funding requests. So I believe it's last meeting, the select board had a joint meeting with the advisory finance committee and approved ARPA funding for 2 EDC projects. The first is a wayfinding project, and so they approved $90,000 in funding for wayfinding. As I had mentioned earlier, we did also apply to the Mass Downtown Initiative's Technical Assistance Program to get funding for technical assistance for wayfinding design. So that number might come down depending on if we win that award and successfully get technical assistance through that program. We'll know in the fall. But good news to know that the wayfinding project will be moving along, and that is also a project that is highlighted as an area of need in the master plan, as well as other planning documents such as the 2019-2020 downtown parking study. Additionally, the select board approved funding for a working capital grant program. The reason why I think this is important is because businesses are, as many of you know, still struggling from the effects of COVID-19, especially some of those secondary and tertiary effects like inflation, labor shortages, debt, and our EDC grant program does not allow for working capital or operating expenses to be eligible use of funds in the program, which I think is, from a policy standpoint, the right idea. That program we should be using to incentivize people to fill vacancies and to incentivize businesses to grow and expand, rather than kind of act as a Band-Aid over, operational expenses and things like that. This program would be a one-time funding opportunity for businesses that are adversely affected by COVID-19. And so businesses will have to show and demonstrate some need, as well as ideally demonstrate that they have not received funding from any other assistance programs out there. There have been a number of business assistance programs throughout various stages of the pandemic. Oftentimes, there were many more applications than they had funding to allocate. Things like the Restaurant Revitalization Fund or Mass Growth Capital Corporation's new applicant grant program. Both received many more applications than they could actually distribute funds for, and so I think there is a need for businesses out there to get some funding to kind of still help us through this hopefully third or fourth quarter of the COVID-19 pandemic. But obviously, we're very excited that those two projects received ARPA funding. Fred and I will be aligning on how and when we plan to start implementing either of those projects, and we'll keep you in the loop as that progresses.
Yeah, I would just quickly add, so at that meeting, so the ARPA funds, it's like $5.7 million we're allocating it, and some of those projects were voted at town meeting, and if ARPA funds were available, we were going to allocate those, so some of that was already kind of designated. There's one project that I think would be of interest to this committee that we're still looking at, and we're going to talk about in one of our June meetings, and that is a recreational splash pad at Bay State Commons. And I think that, as we talked earlier about ways to draw people into the downtown, there was multiple reasons why we think that project could be good. We have not approved it yet. There were still some follow-on questions, but the fact that it does draw people into the downtown, also our recreation department is having a big problem this year out at Chauncey Lake in the ability to staff the lake. So at some point, this could really help kind of with that. So it is one project I just wanted to mention today because I think it does hopefully support the downtown area and get people's thoughts on that, or if you're interested, sort of please let folks know. We'll definitely be talking about it again later this month.
So a recreational splash pad is like a,
It's like a sprinkler park?
Water park, yeah. a little
Yes.
sprinkler.
Similar to the one that's on Route 135 in Northborough.
yeah. So no, I'm just curious as, obviously, DPW's asked people not to water their lawns and stuff. Is there a well that would be drilled for this? And
So it is recirculated water. So however many gallons it takes, it's constantly reprocessed, so it's not always taking in new water, yes.
Okay.
That came up.
Yeah.
Just don't relieve yourself at the splash pad.
I don't have little kids.
Leave it as filtered.
Okay, that's good.
No different than a pool.
Can't go to the spot.
All right. Anything else? No? All right. Jim, Planning Department report?
Sure, thank you. So the planning board meets this evening, and we have several items on the agenda. The West Park Drive extension expects to receive approval this evening. I know Mark's probably excited about that, his project. Also, the Spectrum Health project, which probably are aware of. The Spectrum Health proposes an expansion with a new intake facility, an office, and a classroom building. That's obviously on Oak Street next to the Department of Public Works. And that project is going to be continued from this evening. We received a letter from the applicant, still working on some issues, so he's requested a continuance. Also, the redevelopment of 25 to 29 Research Drive, they're still working on their application size and some of the infrastructure issues. They've also requested a continuance. Those two projects will be taken up again on the next planning board meeting on the 28th of June. We have a possible application in the near future for a new project on Technology Drive. The project site needs some zoning relief potentially. If they come forward, they'll need to probably go to the Zoning Board of Appeals first. The Master Plan Implementation Committee will be discussed on the agenda this evening, the composition of the committee itself and when it might begin. The Planning Board will have a vacancy. Some of you may know Tim Kaler is moving out of town. He had to resign from the Planning Board. This evening will be his last meeting. And anyone that's interested in the vacant seat should write a letter to the Board of Selectmen. The Planning Board and the Selectmen will be meeting at their last Tuesday of the month to discuss who might fill that seat. We have a couple letters of interest already, but if anyone's listening at home and they're interested, a letter of interest should be to the town clerk and the selectmen by the 17th of June. for consideration. That would only be to fill the seat for the balance of this year until the March election. And then if anyone is interested, they would run for the seat, and they would fill the 2 years left on Tim Kaler's board seat until the next election, so which would be in 2025 for that seat. So if anyone's interested, they're welcome to ask me, and I'll give them further details.
Great. Any questions for Jim? No? Thank you, Jim. All right, community development report.
So in terms of upcoming businesses, we have the Coop opening soon. Fred, if you want to give us an update on that.
Sure, and I apologize, I didn't have time to talk to Zach about this. We're due to do final inspections this week. I don't know when their actual date for opening is. I'm not sure if they're planning on a soft opening or whatnot, but hopefully by the next week or so, maybe, you should be able to eat some wings, we hope.
That's good.
Yeah, very exciting project for downtown. Additionally, the Jersey Mike's project is moving along. Fred, do you have any updates with respect to that project in 9 West Plaza?
I'm sorry, I missed that one, Zach.
Jersey Mike's?
That's interesting, too. That, the assistant commissioner is working on the finals for that. He just mentioned that yesterday, I believe, and so it should be right along, to be honest with you. I'm not sure why they're not quite the final, but they're on their way.
Additionally, we're having pretty advanced discussions with a car dealership on the site of 180, 182 Turnpike Road. And as well, we've had a few conversations with industrial businesses on Flanders Road that are interested in expanding. I think those conversations are still very preliminary, and so we wouldn't want to disclose too much, but there's been some discussion on Flanders Road about expansions there. Regarding Community Development Department work and programming, as you know, we hosted an information session on the plastic bag reduction bylaw on May 25th. I will put the video of that on the EDC's website for anybody that wants to view it and see it. And as a reminder, the changes from the plastic bag reduction bylaw are under review from the Attorney General's office. She may strike down some or all of the bylaw change, but if she does approve it, it will take effect on June 20th, 2022, and so businesses should be prepared for that change regardless of what the Attorney General says. Also, we've done a lot of work over the last couple weeks to submit our application to the fiscal year 23 one-stop portal, specifically for MDI technical assistance for wayfinding design. We submitted our application last Friday morning, and so a little bit at the 11th hour, but I'm glad that we got it in. Additionally, I've been working to actually amend the grant program overview and application per some of the changes that you approved today. Regarding upcoming events, on Saturday, 6/11, the Metro West Visitors Bureau is hosting Metro Fest, which is an annual event that they had previously done at Bowditch Field. It's from 11 to 4 p.m. There are, I think, a few Westboro businesses that are going to be at that event, so it might be worth checking out and going to support local businesses. On Thursday, June 16th, the Quarter 9495 Chamber of Commerce is having their annual school business partnership golf tournament from 8 to 5 p.m. I probably won't be making it due to my very lackluster golf skills, but if any of you would like to get involved, I think it's a great event to support. Wednesday, June 15th, the 495 Metro West Partnership is having their State House Day in the District event at Framingham State University from 8 to 10 a.m. This is an opportunity to see a panelist of our legislators ask field questions. The partnership is asking for questions in advance that they may ask our legislators, and so if there's anything that you think relevant to Westboro, relevant to economic development, that you would like to get more of a sense of, please feel free to send me any questions, and I can ask Jason to put them in the queue for consideration. Additionally, I would strongly encourage you all to attend if you're free. It should be a great event, very informational, and helpful to know where Beacon Hill's thinking on economic development issues and programs are. On Thursday, June 16th, the Metro West Chamber is having business after hours at the Residence Inn in Natick from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And then on Wednesday, June 29th, Mass Econ is having their Greater Boston Regional Spotlight from 9 to 11 a.m. And that's all I have from community development. Fred, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you hit it all. Thank you.
June 24th is what the town, downtown, I'm drawing a blank, block party.
Oh, great.
Correct?
Good.
Yeah.
That's the 24th?
I don't know. Sorry.
I think it is. I think
June
that's what I
24th.
heard, yeah.
Instead of the 4th, instead of July 4th weekend. It's gonna
Yes.
be done.
All right, anything else for Zach? No? All right, other business.
So, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna mention, because you mentioned the wayfinding grant. We submitted the grant application for a MassWorks grant for the Otis Street Corridor project, which you're probably aware of. We've given the presentation before on that. That's for $5.5 million, and that went in 2 weeks ago. So
Great.
we're excited for
That's
that.
awesome. Yeah.
And the select board also approved ARPA funding for that project. So the town is committing $250,000 toward the completion of that project.
Yes.
Great.
I just wanted to say as well, I think we should not leave before acknowledging that this will be Linda's last meeting. Personally, I am very sad about that. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Linda, and get to know you over the last year or so. And, you will be missed. And so thank you from myself on behalf of town staff and on behalf of the board for everything that you've done as a part of this committee and for your great leadership over the last year. So.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed working with all of you, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to miss it, and hopefully we can talk about, I can serve as an ambassador or help in some way.
That'd be great.
So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Linda.
Yes, thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Linda.
And then before we go, for our next meeting, it's typically scheduled for Tuesday, July 5th at 8 a.m. We had some discussion before the meeting started, and I've had some discussion with staff about how typically that meeting time is not the greatest for people on July 4th weekend. So I wanted to see if the board wanted to have that meeting at a different time. I would propose Tuesday, July 12th at 8 a.m., so our typical day, time, and place, just a week later, in case folks are taking that week off or having an extended long weekend on July 4th.
Does that work for everybody? I think that's a great idea, right?
I'll be away, but I'm just one person, so nobody else can do it.
That works for you? People want to schedule it for the 12th?
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
That 12th
All right,
works.
let's do that. We'll miss you, Holly, but
And maybe I'll
Well,
call in.
let's go
Yeah, we
forward
could always
with that.
possibly do a hybrid meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
So. Great.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
You know what, if I could just, the 5 Summer Street is being auctioned off right now on 10X. It's a 6,000-foot building. The auction's going to start in about an hour. It's not a foreclosure auction, it's just a straight sale. You can get on 10X and get the due diligence. And the opening bid is $350,000. And 134 Flanders Road sold, I think, last Wednesday for $6.1 million. That's about $106 a foot, less than half of replacement costs, And the building was pretty full, too. I think it was over 90% occupied. And so that's it for me.
Yeah, that 5 South Street, just one minor correction, it's a 3-day auction that started yesterday, and it ends tomorrow.
South Street or Summer Street?
Summer Street, sorry.
5 Summer, I think.
Yeah, 5 Summer.
Mhm.
Yeah, it started yesterday at noon, and I think it ends tomorrow at noon.
That is the building that is, but I guess not for long, owned by Stonegate.
Right.
There are several downtown businesses that are tenants there. I think they have 5 total tenants in that building.
And by the way, Stonegate's the one that bought 134 Flanders Road.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
The auction starts in 2 hours. It starts today
I got notice yesterday. All right.
Quick question.
and ends Thursday.
I'll find a list of the property being auctioned off and things like that for reimbursements.
Yeah, after the meeting, give me your email, I'll forward it to you.
Mark had sent it to me. Mark, I can just forward it to Scott if you'd like.
Yeah.
So Scott, I'll forward you those two sale, or the auction and the sale.
All right. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second? Do I have
Second?
to-
Second.
How does a 3-day auction? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for all the food stuff.
Interesting.
Picking
Starting
up
bid
everything.
for 3 days.